Like, how are we in 2022 talking about things that happened in 74, 75? The alleged victim in this case is Judy Huth. And she's saying that she was sexually assaulted as a teenager. Now, she's 64 years old now. So this is not someone in their 30s, 40s, or 50s. She's 64 years old at this point. The allegations are that these actions actually took place in the mid 70s. And so I was just talking about how I have a birthday coming up next week. I'm gonna be 42, and I was born in 1980. Shout out to my 80s babies. I was born in 1980. So these allegations are older than me. They are almost 50 years old. And so interestingly enough, she actually filed a lawsuit back in 2014. So the case isn't really new. It was filed in 2014. And so one of the things that comes up, the people have questions about, is statute of limitations. Like, how are we in 2022 talking about things that happened in 74, 75? And so when we look at the law on statute of limitations is basically the deadline for the filing of a lawsuit. So right now we're talking about civil. So we're not talking about criminal cases. Right now, the focus is on this civil trial that's happening. And so generally speaking, and this would be considered a personal injury, right? So personal injury could be anything from, a battery. So if a person gets beat up by a bouncer at a club and they want to sue the club, they would be suing for personal injury. If a person gets rear-ended in a car accident, and they're suing for damages. They broke their leg and their ankle and a bunch of other bones, and they're going to be suing for personal injury. And so generally speaking, in a personal injury lawsuit, you have 2 years from the date of the injury to file your lawsuit. But this is a sexual assault case, so it's a little different. All right. So the code section, so we're just pulling up the California Code of Civil Procedure, and this is section 340.1. And so they're saying, in an action for recovery of damages suffered as a result of childhood sexual assault, the time for commencement of the action shall be within 22 years of the age of majority, or within 5 years of the date the plaintiff discovers, or reasonably should have discovered, that psychological injury or illness occurring after the age of majority was caused by the sexual assault. So what does that long paragraph of mumbo jumbo mean? It basically means that if you suffered childhood sexual assault, then you have to file your suit by 40. So by the age of 40 or within 5 years. So this actually was extended to 5 years recently. So it used to be within 3 years. So this just means that you can be past 40, and as long as you file within 5 years today, or 3 years at the time this was filed, then that's where the statute of limitations is. All right. So basically, once you discover that you have some sort of psychological injury or illness, which again, if we're accepting as true the allegations of sexual assault and kind of removing the Cosby and Huth situation out of this, just somebody who was sexually assaulted as a child and then might be 50 years old at this point, right? And so then they feel like they've been dealing with this heavy burden and trauma for so long, but then they finally discover that, hey, the reason why I'm suffering in all these ways is because of this molestation or this sexual assault that I suffered back when I was 13 or 14 or what have you. And if you file within that window, within that 5-year window, then they're going to say, okay, well, you're allowed to file. There are some proof requirements, because I think the natural response to that would end up being, well, can't anybody just make this up and say, oh, well, this happened to me, and then, try and say that they just recently discovered it. Well, no, there's actual evidentiary requirements. So you would then have to have, along with the complaint, there's a certification process in which a mental health professional basically has to certify that, yes, this was discovered at this time, and so this is a legitimate claim. So there's sort of a hurdle to keep people from dragging this out for this long and then filing a lawsuit where their claims would have been barred by the statute of limitations.